Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
All right, we're back on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is Code 47, episode 141. I am Charles Carden, your humble servant, Trek Lord of West Michigan, joined as always by my number one in podcasting anyway, Mr. Peter Stein. Peter, happy Sunday.
Hello. Happy Sunday.
Hap. And in honor of getting back to the beloved format of the random episode, I employed a random individual who's not quite so random. That's Todd Oxtra, Mr. SFU. Good morning.
Hello, salutations, and live long and prosper.
I love it. And the Muppet background is kind of confusing if you're watching us on YouTube. But
I should have put pigs in space on. What am I doing?
It's too late. This is quasi live. But no, we're excited. We're getting back to that format. And Todd was actually the chooser of today's episode. So I wanted to have him back on to kind of give his thoughts. And but I don't want to reveal it just yet. We'll do that after we do some announcements. I actually have, this is a growing list, which will shortly contract. But one thing that we always start the show with is talking about the awesome folks on our Patreon Secret Friends Squad over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. You can pop in there, try us out for 7 days for free. You get programs like this one that drops 1 or 2 days earlier than the rest of the world gets it. You also get ad-free programs and tons of great bonus programs. Both these gentlemen who are on with me today work with me on my Facts of Geek Life show, where we grab a series in a season and break down some episodes. So we've been doing that for a couple of years now. So there is a ton of great content over there, and after your 7 days are through, you can stay on board for as little as $2 a month, which is, as I like to say, a lot of entertainment for $2. Awesome folks like my buddy Derek Trevelyan, the Figure Dude, are great Patreons. Francie, who does my wife's hair, Luke Lord, Mr. Xbox Expansion Pass, and my awesome Uncle Tim Haran. Kicking off our Friends with Benefits level, John Sidorf, the awesome Phoenix Sisters Entertainment, our friends Kelly and Crayley. A little bit more about that. They've got an event coming up this weekend if you're listening when this episode drops. Brendan Myers, Corey and HD, Matthew Keel, my good buddy Kurt Krug, who is our the Scoop, the journalist, is my name for him in our chat, because he's a freelance journalist who's actually helped us out quite a bit, getting some of the great interviews for our Spotlight segment, which we have over on the Patreon. And our friend Tanya Lee, who guested on this program just a couple of episodes back. Are the folks without whom we would not have any of this great stuff would be our Secret Friends Super Squad, the awesome Nias family, Sean, Stella, and Henry of the Twin Cities. We are grateful for all of you guys. Now, a couple of bits of information. We've been talking for a couple of episodes now about the Multiverse Fun, F-U-N, no D, fundraiser. That is an event that our friends, Phoenix Citrus Entertainment, are putting on this weekend. If you're listening to this again when it drops, we're in January of 2025. It's a virtual Comic-Con and charity fundraiser all in one. They're teaming up in 2025 with Comic Books for Kids, the charity providing, as you can imagine, child-friendly comic books to children in hospitals and cancer centers across the U.S., raising funds for that cause. Upcoming January 24th through 26th, they will have pre-recorded and live Comic-Con style content to include celebrity comic and writing guests, including Creek Wilson, Leia Williams, Jerry Gaylord, John Casper, and many more. And I just found out, I kind of knew, but I just got a date that I will be appearing in one of the panels this upcoming Sunday, January 26th, at 12 Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, the Collectors Panel, because I am, if you're looking at my stuff here, an avid collector of a lot of different stuff. So I'm going to be joining some other folks to talk about just that. Visit the multiversefunraiser.com for more information on how to tune in and to contribute. So very excited to be in partnership to help some folks in need right now. Everybody knows here in January 2025 of the horrific wildfires sweeping Southern California right now. I am pairing up to sometime this week with an associate that we've interviewed on our Patreon in the past, Star Trek Enterprise actor John Billingsley, who is very active with the Hollywood Food Coalition out there in Hollywood, California, one of many charities that are working to feed those in need, people who have lost everything because of these devastating wildfires. I should be having a conversation with John, which we'll go ahead and share in upcoming episodes here, sponsoring all the organizations that could really help out. But in the meantime, if you visit HOFO, HOFOCO.org, there are details about how to donate. Every little bit helps. So definitely do that. So, oh my gosh, that was a lot of talking for me. Are you guys ready to move forward and talk about some Star Trek? Peter, jog my memory. I don't believe we had any big news stories that I'm not really thinking of.
Nope, other than Section 31 officially releases this week on the 24th.
Correct. Yes. We will be talking about that in our next episode with another guest joining in. I was privileged to receive a screener from Paramount, so I have seen it, but there is an embargo on it, so I will not talk about it. But it is.
I haven't seen it yet, so
it's definitely something to see. I will say that much, though I've shared my thoughts privately with both of you guys without any spoilers. But yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, let's move on. And again, the random episode is a concept that Peter and I kind of pot boiled because we know that when we don't have new content to talk about, it would cut our show in half. So we had to come up with something different. So we came up with basically employing, the 20-sided die or 26-sided die in this case, which lets us roll for first a series, then a season, then an episode. So it's a 3-step process. And several weeks back, I put that out to our Patreon. Todd took the bait. He rolled the dice and he came up with Star Trek Discovery, Season 2, Episode 3, Point of Light. And I don't know if he's glad he did it or not, but you know what? He's a trooper. He hung in there and he agreed to come on and talk about this. So I'm going to do a summary and then we can kind of jump into our thoughts about the episode. So as I said, Point of Light, a surprise visitor to the USS Discovery brings shocking news about Spock and dredges up past regrets for Burnham. Following the asteroid incident, Tilly struggles to keep her grip on reality. L'Orel's authority on Kronos is threatened. I'm feeling a very strong soap opera vibe here, but you know what? I think it's, I don't want to be judgmental. So you know what? I think I'm going to kick it over to Mr. Todd Oxtra to kind of get the ball rolling. Todd, start talking to us about how you felt about this episode.
Considering I've only watched Discovery once, meaning, just have not rewatched any of it, and I still have not finished the final season. Going back to this, I completely forgot that there were hangovers from the Klingon main storyline in this. And I forgot that Michelle Yeoh shows up in her new role in Section 31. I'm like, holy crap, who is that in her garb? And I couldn't remember if that was, the Red Angel just showing up. I'm like, oh no, it's Michelle Yeoh. So this one was kind of like dropping you in, and the whole Tilly thing, I completely forgot about that. So, but I did remember the annoying friend and the actress who played her. And I'm like, oh my God, the worst part. And I also forgot that Pike was in command. So I forgot like everything. I'm like, I'm going to just plow through, but I did enjoy the episode, but there was a lot going on. I also looked and I'm like, oh, it's kind of funny because instead of the uniforms reflecting what season you're in, it's kind of like what Burnham's hair looks like is the different season.
It's and she Janeway hair effect.
Yeah, she definitely had, because again, we know in the final couple seasons, she has the very long dreadlocks. Cool look. When I met her this time last year on the cruise, she was still bearing that hair, and it was just as the season was starting to debut, or was just about to debut. But she started the show with kind of short hair, and by this point, she had kind of a poof and like short on the sides. And she definitely had a lot going on.
It was like a high top fade.
Yeah, it was. It was very, Peter, you won't at all be familiar with a a rap act from the 90s called Kid and Play, but High Top Fade is now the name of this episode. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, you're welcome. But the other part that I completely forgot, it's like, I didn't realize, or maybe I just forgotten because it kind of annoyed me, that her romantic entanglements were such a huge part of this series. And ultimately, all of her romantic entanglements put the crew and everything at risk.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe she should have been a love him and leave him like Kirk, just like, hey, she's just going to bag somebody every week. Maybe that should have been better.
Kirk didn't really have a romantic entanglement that really screwed things up until we got to the movies, right? Because he had his son and Carol Marcus, and the real entanglement
didn't quite screw it up.
Well, I mean, it screwed it up for his son because he got killed. But
Kirk's fathering screwed it up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he did the crime, didn't do the time, and then the crime came back around again. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So so we have kind of the three storylines going on in this. We have the main story, which is the visit from Spock's mother, Amanda, who was played by Peter. Help me out. What's the name of the actress from back in TOS? Jane Wyatt. And this is actress.
This is the third person to play Amanda.
Yeah, this is actress. This is not Winona Ryder, who was the JJ movie version, but this is actress Mia Kirshner, who is very famously a lesbian mercenary for hire in the Fox show 24, which is one of my favorite shows.
Oh, really?
She
Deep
was.
cut.
Well, in the very
Peter, you and I remember that.
Yeah. Well, she's really famous, particularly the very first episode, which aired about 2 months after 9/11, after jumping out of a plane and blowing it up, which they had to very precipitously do some editing around that to kind of make that go away as much as possible. But she also tried to assassinate the president in that series. So she was definitely a big bad. So it's weird to see her in this role, but she's awesome. And I'm assuming a Canadian actress because you get a ton of Canadians this because it films in Toronto. I love seeing Captain Pike. I really like, and Peter and I are uniform guys, but I really like the Discovery blues. It's, as I continue to thin out my uniforms, that's one of the ones I've kept. But the thing I really hate about it is that the badge is the only thing that really shows off someone's rank, and it's in little tiny dots on the side, which, in TNG, they had the collars and they had little pips on them, and the old show, they had the stripes on the sleeves. So it's annoying. You'd be talking to somebody and you're like, is that the captain? Is that an ensign?
Charlie,
I have no idea.
In space, there's no rank.
Yes, right. Nobody can hear you scream, I'm the captain. But yeah, I really do love those. But yeah, 3 stories. I don't love the character of Tilly. That's no surprise to anybody who listens to this show. Peter and I in general are not huge Discovery guys, but I'll pontificate more about that later. Let's shift over to Peter. Give us your opening salvo, my friend. Where do you land with this episode?
Well, it's definitely going to be a salvo. This episode brought back my early disco PTSD.
Yeah,
Disco PTSD. Which song? Disco Inferno.
Right.
This is definitely the 8th circle of hell.
Going back, change the name of the episode.
Actually, I don't remember all the circles, so I'm not going to definitively say. But
there you go.
Anyway, this reminded me of all of the things that I dislike, which is never a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it took me, it had the whole opening montage previously on, which was fine because I was like, okay, this is where we're at. Thank you for reminding me.
Super necessary because we would have been even more lost.
Yeah, it does point out a little bit of the weaknesses in having fully serialized storytelling in the sense that you can't just hop in and watch something, which, that's fine. But when we're just trying to hop in and look at something random, it does make it a little bit difficult because then you have to look at either end, what the hell happened? But we had the reminding of the Klingons again. This was there were multiple pokes in the dialogue of oh yeah, we look different now. Thanks. Oh, we have hair now. Okay, you should take the paint off your face. Yes, you really should. There are lots of lines like that, which this season, particularly when I was watching it, always felt like it was digging at the fans a bit. Because there was so much I didn't really like season 1 folks, and then there was a lot of digging into the folks for season 2. I remember a bunch of tweets that happened when the first episode, and I definitely tweeted at one of the people a face palming Picard of like, come on, guys, let's not be jerk faces to the fans. I will not say who it is. I don't want to shame them, but I'm just going to say that did happen.
I really struggle with why it was necessary. A couple different things, just the series in general. Why the show had to be a prequel. Todd very famously hates prequels, and we know that it's like Todd, how would you describe the percentage when prequels work out? Like maybe 80-20 rule, maybe less.
Less, I'd say if 10% work, you're hitting like Andor would be. I mean, name the percent. Name the you can name the good probably prequels on your hand versus all of the other prequels that probably didn't work.
Right. So I mean, they shift this show at the end of this season to taking place in a completely different time period in the future. That's very smart. That is where the show should have started, because having this a prequel, it was like a double-edged sword. It was member berries. Hey, remember Spock, remember Pike, remember
and
the
that was
Klingons, but remember them by not remembering them because
by not knowing what they look like. Like this is, I know this is going to be a little bit more ranty, but bringing back Amanda also threw into sharp relief the inconsistencies with Burnham's character as to her Vulcan upbringing,
right?
And it just reminded me of how that just doesn't work,
right?
And having her like the scene between her and Amanda, like I get that that's supposed to be very poignant, but for me it's exceptionally painful because it puts up how much they turn Sarek into an absolute asshole.
Yeah, big time. It was
kind of, which to be fair, in TOS he kind of was.
Yeah, he was not very likable in his like one show appearance.
But that was more of like he's just kind of a very demanding father, that sort of thing, and just kind of a jerk in that way. But in this particular instance, it also turns Amanda into a jackass, where it's like, well, I couldn't show love to Spock, so I put it all on you, and I'm such a terrible person. It's like, eh.
Yeah, I know. That was like,
let's not make Amanda a terrible person.
Yeah, call some Vulcan CPS on this, or get him on Maury Povich.
Yeah, so there's rough. So I didn't like that. I didn't like that we have this whole thing of, I mean, I know I crapped on this whole storyline back when it came out, but I didn't like that Spock was in a mental hospital, and we find out later that he's dyslexic and all of this stuff. It's like, can we not give Spock
a very special episode of Star Trek Discovery?
That's exactly what this whole season felt like. Is that this was I don't know if you want to call it high drama, but everything was so dramatic. You had the L'Rell, and she's in love with Tyler because Tyler is integrated with Vogue. But something that I made in my notes is that it's a little weird that that's the case, because Vulcans or Klingons as a culture are very disdainful of medical technology. So how did they pull this off? Because again, if a Klingon gets shot, they're like, we'll just let him die. He's good. Or he broke his hand. Nah, that's, what?
Chop off his hand and give
him a sign of honor to be crippled.
They're very much. Well, remember when Worf broke his back, he was like, well, I got to kill myself now because I can't walk, So it's just why? I don't want to just trash. There's got to be something of value in this, because I maintain that all Star Trek has something to like on this, but I'm struggling here, guys. Help me.
Well, would it have been better? Now, this is like the going off the cuff. What if they went back to the original design of the Klingons from TOS and they just showed up like guys with bad mustaches?
You know what? They could have done it. But again, that also pulls into the whole concept of why set this. The show is, just for framing reference, is 10 years prior to the first season of the original series. So about, in their calendars, about 2256.
It's 5 years after The Cage.
Yeah, exactly. So you look at the Cage, which you saw the Enterprise filmed in 1965 with the cardboard sets and the different stuff, and then you see the Enterprise now, and it looks like Discovery. and then we're supposed to believe that 10 years later it looks slightly different than it did in the cage. So it's just, it's tough. The argument could be, well, it's a reimagining and blah, blah, blah. But simply put, a lot of it just felt entirely unnecessary. Why not just start it in the 32nd century? This is what's happening now. It's a group of people, or it could be some people got thrown into the future, and then that's where the story starts. I know, I know we're kind of going back to plan here, and we're getting really off talking about this episode in particular, but the whole part of it, I'm missing it. Todd, please.
So I was thinking about this, and was this the last time we saw Klingons in the new Trek TV productions? Was there?
No,
I can't remember.
They showed up a couple more times in this season.
Okay.
They go back.
They show up in the control fight in the end of this season,
right?
With the newly commissioned D7.
Yeah,
so,
and Pike goes to the monastery and uses the time crystal, and that's
that's right.
Time crystal, and that's how they get. But he also sees his future.
Yeah,
the time crystal. Yeah, exactly. Which is the time crystal at the monastery is pretty weird too. But I digress.
So my question is, Strange New Worlds is still in this time period,
right? A couple years later, yeah.
I'm assuming we'll see the Klingons again. What are they going to look like? Are they still going to look like the Muppet version of the Klingons?
We've seen the Klingons in Strange New Worlds twice.
Oh, we have?
Yeah.
I totally forgot.
They look more akin to the TNG Klingons.
Right.
Okay.
So it's like the producers figured out that, people really hate this. Let's take a step back and
we're in the region of the Klingon Empire where they look like we know them.
Right.
We're just going to, everywhere we go now, it's like, there's a colony of those Klingons there.
Yeah. There have been multiple attempts in beta canon, which Star Trek Online is the biggest forwarder of that, that these were different genetic groups within the Klingon Empire. But
Yeah. So, in summary, again, we've got 3 stories. The Tilly story, I couldn't care less. I don't care for the character. She's just not very Star Trek-y to me. She's just kind of like like an obnoxious present day person. I don't care.
She's the Jan Brady of Star Trek characters.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. Marsha. Don't make me change the name of the
Peter, you're killing me, man. You got to get some more old references like us.
I know.
I make old references. I just don't know some of them.
Well, the Brady Bunch was a very popular sitcom, late 1960s, early 1970s.
Okay. You have to do some Family Guy flashbacks for Peter.
Yeah. It was the first.
Edit it.
Yeah, it was. He needs an aside. Like, here's Peter Griffin explaining. He's very. So I can't stand her. I do like Sonequa Martin Green as an actress, and I've met her personally. She's wonderful in person. I, in a lot of ways, kind of like the Michael Burnham character, kind of, sort of. But again, the whole setting just drives me nuts, and the Klingon part absolutely drives me nuts because it doesn't have any consistency. And then again, it changes once we get into Strange New Worlds, and then in the original series, the Klingons are just dudes painted brown with bad mustaches, which was explained in Enterprise, but then it was undone here. And you could say, well, the Klingon Empire is vast and different people look like different planets and whatever. But anyway, so those 2 plots. So in my rating, I said, the A plot of it does kind of keep things moving forward because the Red Angel and the 8, red star,
the 7 signals,
is and so this points to that, and you get a piece of Spock knowing about the Red Angel and when they were kids, use that to help them find Burnham after she ran away. Like that works, and it works as it goes along. But the Klingon stuff is just incredibly difficult to watch because this resolves the Ash Tyler, who was a guy from last season who has a Klingon double identity. It resolves his arc of being on the homeworld and his romance with Laurel. Mary Chieffo is the actress who also I've met, and she's a lovely person. But and we get the monastery, and then
don't forget the severed baby head. I mean, that's even better.
It was his severed head, and then she talk about throwing the baby out with bathwater. It was a very weird deal. Kind of interesting that yes, we see that this, by complete random chance, tied in Section 31 and Michelle Yeoh's character, and then in our next episode we're talking about that movie, which obviously follows that somewhat. So all right, so in the final analysis, I look at my rating and I feel like it's going a little bit lower. If you were to judge this, I'm a big one for ratings. We'll go around the horn. If you were to give this, a rating out of 10 severed heads, Todd, how many severed heads are you giving this episode?
I would give it like a 6.5, which is, half a baby, I guess, a head, body, half a body. It did remind me that Discovery brought me back really into Star Trek. And because of the way different storytelling felt a little bit more higher budget, was definitely doing something different than Enterprise, those things, and different, going back to kind of more of the more balanced plotting of Star Trek rather than we got in the JJ movies. So I'm like, that was great. But then it also reminded me a detriment of, like Peter, like you said, the ongoing story arc. So it's hard to pop in. People probably can't tell you what their favorite episode is because it feels like there's no individual episodes. It just feels like a journey.
Yeah.
And then it makes me appreciate what Strange New Worlds is doing. And I'm hoping that Academy does it as well, which is more standalones.
Right. Because
if
you make it less accessible, you'll get less people accessing it.
Standalones with a basic B plot through line.
Yeah, exactly. DS9 did a great job.
DS9 did a masterful job.
Yeah,
absolutely. You can advance a story by telling great individual stories.
Right. And then eventually coming back and saying, well, you remember last season, this thing and that thing happened and whatever. And don't make it so laborious for someone to catch up. Peter.
I don't have to watch like a 3-minute previously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So 10 severed heads, where do you land?
I'm gonna give this 3.
Oh.
I mean, we all know I'm pretty biased, so I'm gonna probably rate these things low anyway. But the Klingon storyline just didn't really work for me, in part because it didn't really tie into the A plot all that much, and so it just felt very, hey, let's do this. And it's like, you probably should have done a separate episode that had either a different B plot or a different A plot, so that there was, at least some
connective tissue,
tissue or something, other than him saying like, oh, well, there's some issues over at the Klingon homeworld. You should tell Command. Okay.
Really got it.
But Peter, you got all those cool slow motion battles, like
I hate slow motion
JJ, like a Snyder movie.
Or the flipping upside down cameras. Like those are my favorite.
Oh God, that was horrible.
Yeah. I just and you feel like in any episode of anything, you get a series like this, well, we got to have an action sequence of some variety, and it just felt like, okay, super tacked on.
Some of my favorite Star Trek episodes don't have action sequences,
right? Because that's Star Trek is not. It's not John Wick. You know what I mean?
Like one of the episodes we're going to talk about in this batch of Deep Space Nine episodes has like a couple of punches thrown, someone falls over a table, and that's it.
Yeah, right. But exactly.
So that's kind of an issue. And then the Tilly bit, the scene that really stuck out to me for that one was when she was on the bridge and having her like full break. And I'm just like, okay, first of all, this is really stupid. Secondly, you're Starfleet. You know that shit messes with people's heads on a regular basis. So if she's acting weird, everyone should be like, all right, we got a problem. Let her go to sick bay. And she's like, I quit. You should go to sick bay, girl. Like that's where you need to go.
Yeah. Instead of having a very like teenagery, like, that's it, I quit. That's what it felt like. She feels
and
like
that's
she's
kind of my problem.
Jan Brady of Star Trek. That's the name of the episode. Oxtra nailed it. Jan Brady Star Trek.
So that's kind of my trouble with the episode, and why I rate it so low is there's really no connective tissue between the 3 different plots. They don't really talk to each other. There's just some really, really weird storytelling choices. And then there's the continuous it's a little hyperbolic, but character assassination of the OG characters of Amanda, Sarek, and Spock.
That's rough. That's rough. Well, I will. It's funny. I can. I would end up just about in the middle with you two guys, but this was about a 4 for me, simply because I really appreciate Sonequa Martin Green. She acts the hell out of stuff. So I give it a 4 for that. But everything else in this, just, if you're going to have 3 plots, because most shows, will have 2 or 3, and that makes sense because one
that's normal.
Big story is not going to, drive a 44-minute episode. But just the absolute pointlessness of stories B and C drove me up the wall. Yeah. So, okay, a couple of fun facts, and then we will wrap this up. This was the first full episode of Discovery to establish the black Starfleet arrowhead design for Section 31, which survives into Lower Decks, because the character of William Boimler, the transporter clone of
Bradward.
Edward Boimler. Oh my! See,
Bradward?
That's his full name, yeah.
the show's been over a few weeks and I've forgotten about it. Whereas when the Black Badge was previously was saw in Context for Kings in season 1 and mentioned in a bonus scene, blah blah blah, which is, I don't, do we consider bonus scenes canon? I have no idea. But let's see here. Yeah, first appearance of the D7, which is the main Klingon ship throughout the original series, and then becomes a different version of it throughout TNG and in DS9 and other stuff. Yes. So yeah, the Klingon hair thing is the last one. They grew their hair back after the end of the war. Was that the Federation War? Was that the war between the great houses? All I can say is, and we also see this in Voyager, there is a device that can make someone's hair grow incredibly rapidly, because all of the Klingons have like beautiful, like long rock star hair, and it's been like a couple of months. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't snap my fingers and then just, have hair that I look like I'm in, Motley Crue or something.
Oh, Charlie, I snap my fingers and
Yeah, yeah.
pops.
You need that lotion that Homer.
Little do you know, Todd is in fact a Q.
Oh boy, yes.
That's true.
Snap your fingers and you can have that high top fade that you were talking about. All right. So, okay. Well, let's wrap it up. Yeah, let me just change the name of the episode to Star Trek's Jan Brady, because I think that's absolutely terrific. But that's it, Todd. Thanks for choosing this episode, because it was certainly eye-opening for all of us. Next time around, we will be talking about Section 31, but then we'll get back to this format the week after that. We have a couple chosen. But more to the point, as we go down the road, we want our listeners to help us out picking these episodes. It's very simple. You just need to go ahead and reach out to us on any of our socials.
And if you want to make us suffer, you can pick terrible ones like Sub Rosa.
Yeah. Yes.
Please don't. But
again, that's the random part of it. You don't pick anything. You just pick a number. And then the rest of the magic happens. But Todd, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subjecting us to this, because it was good for a laugh regardless. Where do people find you out there?
Well, when I'm not, absolutely swooning about Star Trek Voyager, you can follow me on Blue Skies at Todd Oxtra and at Secret Friends Unite, and check out our Discord to be part of the Star Trek conversation and be part of the show.
Absolutely correct. All right, we're going to take a quick pause. Todd is going to leave us, but then Peter and I will be back to talk more about Season 6 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Live long and prosper. Nanu Nanu. Discovery never. We'll be back.
Hey, Secret Friends Unite, let me tell you about Zencastr. We use them for our show, and now they're supporting us. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. It's the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. Provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content, all from one dashboard. Being a creator has never been easier. And we chose Zencastr because of the ease of use, high quality output, and it makes it super easy for our guests to come on. We had multiple solutions we tried before, and Zencastr has just been the best fit for us. Why Zencastr? It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sounds and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. Have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you're interested in making an easy, high-quality podcast just with the click of a browser button, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code SFU1. You'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Now back to the show.
All right, we're back. Wow. Talking about Discovery was an experience, to say the least. And you know what? We'll play fair. If if another episode gets chosen through the randomizer in the future, we'll do our best. But yeah, that was interesting. Anyway, let's jump on in. We're still in season 6 of Deep Space Nine. We get into some real heavy episodes here, but we do have some levity as well, and some kind of different ones. It's a good crop, but we'll jump on in.
It's mostly heavy episodes this time,
Yeah,
actually. I
yeah.
think it's only the first one that's a little bit lighter.
Yeah, and really not even terribly so. Speaking of the first one, Peter, if please do the honors, get us rolling.
All right, episode 14, One Little Ship, directed by Alan Craker, written by David Weddle and Bradley Thompson, aired on February 14th of 98. Dax, O'Brien, and Bashir board a runabout which is shrunken to 4 inches long as they investigate a rare subspace compression phenomenon. And in the meantime, the Dominion take over the Defiant.
Right.
Shenanigans ensue.
That's the part of it that's sort of fun. Yeah, because we also get the first kind of exploration of Jem'Hadar culture, which
And conflict.
Yeah, and conflict, because we got a piece of that early in season 4, where we had that episode where O'Brien and Bashir were stranded on the jungle planet, and you had the one Jem'Hadar who, by hook or by crook, was cured of the white, and then he was like, "You've got to replicate, this so that I can cure my men, otherwise they're all going to go nuts." And then it was the same thing earlier in the season in the Rocks and Shoals in that first 6-episode arc that kicked things off. So, but this is the first time that we learn that there's kind of a culture clash between OG Jem'Hadar from back in the Gamma Quadrant, back in the homeland, and then new Jem'Hadar that were grown here in the Alpha Quadrant, and the young looking down on the old. And it definitely comes into play throughout the plot of this, because our people have to our people on the little runabout, it's the Fantastic Voyage was an old movie from the 70s or something, where a little ship shrunk down and inside some guy's body. I don't even remember the plot of the movie, but or Inner Space, which is a movie from the 80s that I love, was Dennis Quaid, Meg Ryan, and Martin Short. And Dennis Quaid is in a little thing, and he gets shrunk down and injected to Martin Short, and they have to solve a mystery and make sure that the guy can get out and he'll live and all this different stuff. So this was kind of neat. And they had the same kind of thing, like at some point O'Brien and Bashir have to go inside a panel, and they have to. I love I just love the set they had to build with the big like isolinear chips and the like he was
the dryer vent for the cabling.
Yeah. It was. I mean, I thought that was. You're right. So that's part of it that was cute.
No, it was. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. But they didn't. There was some levity in this, but obviously there was some peril, because our people realized that, hey, we're going to have to blow the ship up in order to save our, to stop them from taking it. And so, you see a little conflict between the alphas and is it the gammas or the elders?
Yeah, the alphas and the gammas. They called the one an elder because he was the only gamma in the group.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's like a fraternity. It's very much like a fraternity, because they're they gamma, whatever, fighting amongst each other. So, I thought it was pretty cool. But like you said, looking over the other episodes, there's not a lot of ton of levity, even though this wasn't a very light episode. There was more levity than there was in other things going on. So, any other thoughts?
I thought it was quite entertaining how the Rubicon had to fly throughout, like, BPS conduits and stuff, where it's like we got to see parts of the Defiant that you hadn't really seen, and pushing door buttons with the nose of the ship.
Yeah, that was pretty, but like, not to push too hard so they don't break it. Yeah,
there was a lot of just really funny stuff with the ship having to navigate within the Defiant, so that I thought that was kind of fun. And they did address like what about oxygen out there? Well, it wouldn't really work, Chief, because now you're smaller and you can't really metabolize the oxygen because it's too big. And they addressed that, and then they found a way around it, and it's like, so like there was a lot of thought put into the fact that they shrank, which is something that a lot of things don't do. So I thought that was kind of a fun little twist there.
Yeah, it was kind of the opposite of a bottle show, because a bottle show in Star Trek parlance means ones that they might film where there's just existing sets, like on a show like Ship in a Bottle,
Yep.
which was the name of an episode. But yes, which was not a bottle show. But with this, it was on the ship, but they still had to build new sets because they built that console that they were inside of. So, but other than that, yeah, fun episode, and I do love the bit at the end. So they get back to the station, and Worf says, I'm writing a poem about our adventure. And she's like, Dax is like, oh, that's great, can I see it? And he's like, well, it's not, so it's work in progress. And she takes the pad, and
first he recites it. Says, there was a little ship that took a little trip,
and she's like
that's terrible.
She's like, there's nothing on this pad. So it's funny to see Worf kind of break down and be silly, which,
because he like grins stupidly at her, and it's like, all right,
I like it. It's good stuff.
It's fun.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we'll move right along to episode 15, which is Honor Among Thieves. Alan Eastman handling the directing, story by Philip Kim, and teleplay by Renee Echevarria. So we've got potentially a spec script that's polished off by one of these seasoned folks on the staff. February 21 of 1998. That was the week of my birthday. I was 22 that week. Because again, all these dates are, like the Sunday that kicks off a week, because it's a syndicated show. Starfleet Intelligence recruits Chief O'Brien to infiltrate the Orion Syndicate to find the Starfleet informant. So super cool concept. We're completely off the station. I think
there's a couple scenes that are on the station towards the beginning to establish that he's gone.
Yeah, you're right. There's a B plot where they come back, and it's almost comical, like, hey, the such and such broke down. How did Chief keep this running without us? Like everybody had to like take on his different jobs and stuff, and they're trying to fill in for him. But for the most part, this is all, it's all filmed on soundstage sets. Like they built a bar, or they built the street scene, or they built the apartment
rooms.
It was really interesting. So Chief is undercover. This is Starfleet Intelligence, but not yet Section 31.
Not to be confused with Section 31. They are not the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Starfleet Intelligence is the regular branch of Starfleet, where Section 31, we can't talk about it yet because it gets introduced a few episodes down the road here that we're going to talk about in a minute. But I like this episode. This episode also lent itself to having a sequel, which ties in with one of our main cast members that we haven't met yet, because we get a new cast member next season. But yeah, I really liked the departure from this because it felt apart, but it also ties in with the Dominion arc, because we find out that the Orion Syndicate, which is the big mafia in the Star Trek universe. We don't know much about it at all, because the Orions themselves were a product of the animated series. I'm trying to think of a time that, besides the Orion Slave Girls, which we see like twice.
Yeah,
TOS.
The Orion Syndicate only appeared in. Well, actually, I think it was mentioned briefly in The Cage. Like we saw the Slave Girl, but then they also mentioned the Syndicate, I think. Orion Pirates.
Yeah, I would have to dig in on that, because I'm not sure. But and the Orion Syndicate gets explored more in Enterprise. We actually learned quite a bit about it on more than one occasion in the 4th season. And the Orion Syndicate is great, and of course we get tons of it in rather tongue in cheek in a lot of ways in Lower Decks, because of the character of Tendi and her family. But this is I feel like the first leaning in of, they're very, much of the mafia. When you stand up for someone, or you vouch for them, then you're vouching with your life if they do something terrible. And Bilby, I think, is the name of the character that O'Brien befriends. And eventually, it's through this, O'Brien's trying to find out that that there's some connection between the Syndicate and the Dominion, because we do witness a meeting there. The Starfleet Intelligence Contact, there's a show on Netflix that's long since over, but it was highly acclaimed, called Orange is the New Black. It's about women in a women's prison. He was the warden. That guy.
Oh, that's wild.
The entire time I was watching that show, I'm like, why does this guy look so familiar? It's because my brain always thinks of anybody who appears in Star Trek as being a Star Trek actor, but sometimes with a single appearance, it tends to drift off a little bit. But excellent episode, great story.
Yeah.
And again, just judging by the story teleplay split, not recognizing the name Philip Kim, potentially this is a spec script, or this is somebody who, like on Saturday Night Live, like, hey, they're going to run with my skit. This is somebody that maybe we didn't see a lot of stories from this person. So
It's
so
also
I dug it.
it's also interesting at the end how O'Brien goes back to try to save Bilby,
Yeah.
and then you just get this ultimate like betrayal moment where
Yeah.
Bilby's like, "You tricked me. I stood up for you, so it doesn't really matter if I live or not because they're going to kill me anyway,
And my family. Yeah. So
and my family. So if I die here, then
yeah.
there's no the word is escaping, but there's no comeuppance.
Yeah,
There's no
exactly.
restitution made of I'm going to kill you because you have compromised the organization."
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it was one of those like O'Brien clearly doesn't understand how these sorts of
Right.
mob politics work, which makes sense.
Right, because
But
it's not Starfleet.
it's
It's
not
not
Starfleet.
Federation.
Like
Yeah.
it's not. There's no. It says honor among thieves, but there isn't. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
right. Yeah, the whole thing's a
and
contradiction.
that's kind of the whole point of the episode. And so it's very interesting how O'Brien like gains the trust of Bilby, and actually they both start to actually like each other
Yeah.
and become friends. And like Bilby tries to, it's like, oh, you don't have a family. Family's really important. Here's a really nice girl. You should start a family with her. Like there's like all of this sort of stuff that's, you can tell that they definitely lean into the fact that like a mafia is it's the family, right? They're helping each other. And so it's really interesting to see how like that becomes a betrayal. And he's like,
Yeah.
better for me to die because I stood up for you
Right.
rather than leaving with you, because then they'll find out and then my family's done and it doesn't matter. And O'Brien's like,
Right.
well, we'll hide you. That doesn't matter, dude.
Right. Right.
They'll find me.
And as I said, there's a sequel to this that happens
Mhm.
next season that really underscores the fact that there is no hiding. So,
No.
but again, we'll be talking about that. We'll have to come all the way back around to season 7 of DS9, which means we've got some other seasons to get through. But yeah, great episode. I did love how they kind of split it. They kind of really moved it apart from not only what you would normally see on the show, but then also the ongoing storyline. And it's an O'Brien episode where I don't think anybody's torturing him in this one. Does he get tortured?
No one's torturing him. He just gets sad in the end.
He gets sad, which is its own kind of torture, as we all know.
Which it's better than all of the other times that O'Brien suffers.
Very true. Very true. So, all right. Well, cool. All right. Let's move on. Next one is yours.
Change of Heart, directed by David Livingston, written by Ronald D. Moore.
My hero.
Aired on February 28th of 98. The timeline on this description is messed up, but at some point during this episode, Jadzia Dax is critically injured on an away mission. Worf has to choose between saving his wife or completing their assignment. The B plot is O'Brien becomes obsessed with beating Quark at Tongo, which is pretty great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you're right. If they didn't find a way to balance the A plot in this with something a little more benign, it would be the most depressing episode ever. But we're starting to see Worf and Dax have been married since the beginning of the season. Well, not even since the beginning.
They've only been married for like maybe a month or two in universe.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is their first time that they're going on a mission, just the two of them, which you thought, oh,
they're talking about honeymoons and stuff, I think.
Right. Yeah. Because they're like, no, you're right. Because they got to take the mission is they have to pick up a defector, a Cardassian from a Dominion base on this jungle planet, Sukara, I think it is.
Originally, they were just going to talk to him, and then he's like, no, you have to get me out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Yeah. So he's like, well, things are getting hot for me here, so you got to get me out of here. So they go to do that, and they have to do the classic, we have to, park several days away, walk, because otherwise we'll be detected, and we'll go through this dangerous jungle. And throughout part of it, they come upon a Jem'Hadar patrol, and as referencing what happened in the ship episode back in season 5, the Jem'Hadar weapons have an is weird. They have an anticoagulant in the energy weapon, so if you get shot by it, you can't stop bleeding. Like the wound can't be healed, which is just that's so perfect.
It doesn't close on its own.
Yeah, that's so perfectly Dominion. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Dax is dying. Worf's doing everything he can to kind of keep her going, but he has to keep moving. He's got to go another 12 hours to grab this guy and then come back to Dax, and they can pick her up and then go back to the runabout. And he can't do it. He goes forward for a little while, and as he's running this, it's kind of like the telltale heart. You're hearing this heartbeat get heavier and heavier and heavier, and then he stops and grabs Dax and goes back to the station, and Cisco is dressing him down, and he said, Worf said, I was thinking about my wedding and the beating of two hearts, and the thought that I couldn't live with myself if she died. I just couldn't. And this is where something interesting happens. Cisco says, well, there won't be charges. There won't be a court martial because it would expose this entire deal, which I don't, at this point, the deal was kind of done because it had been kind of exposed, I thought. So this is
the guy died. So
yeah. But then he says, and I love this, he says, Cisco says, to be perfectly honest, you probably won't be offered a command of your own after this. And Worf becomes captain of the Enterprise after Picard gets promoted. So one of the few times Cisco is wrong about something, and in a good way, and definitely in a good way.
But to be fair, Cisco does say, like, you probably made the right call personally. Right.
He said, I would have done it too if it was Jennifer.
Yeah. So it's one of those, like, Cisco's like, as your commanding officer, I have to reprimand you.
Yeah.
But
as a
husband, as a human being, you made the right call.
Exactly. So great episode. And again, Worf is the character who has gotten the most screen time out of any other Star Trek character. I don't think that record will ever be broken, because he was 7 seasons of TNG, 4 seasons of DS9, and 4 movies, and then 1 of Picard. I think he wasn't in every episode, but he was
not as Worf, but he was also in Undiscovered Country.
Right, exactly. So yeah, Michael Dorn is the most prolific Star Trek actor. And a very nice guy. I met him at Star Trek Las Vegas back in 2023. He was I think he was the last of the original 9 that I met. And so I was kind of gushing when I met him. I'm like, oh my God, you're the last one who I was meeting. But yeah, he was like, okay, kid, get away from me. No, he was very nice. But yeah, great episode, great character development. For Worf, and kind of an exploration of the fact that, even though he's a Klingon, his human roots show through sometimes. Because a Klingon, if he had a Klingon wife, she would have just been like, no, that's and he would have just gone ahead and done his bit, because then his Parmakai would have died with honor in the glorious service of the Empire, yada yada yada. But he is, he's a human Klingon hybrid. He's raised by humans. He has our ass backwards values. It's very un-Klingon.
Yes.
So yeah.
And then there's also a B plot where you have O'Brien trying to beat Quark at Tongo, and then decides that he can't do it, but Bashir can. And so then he teaches Bashir how to play Tongo. Bashir plays Tongo against Quark, and then loses because Quark uses his emotions against him.
He does. Quark is, it's proven that Quark he's like Wolverine. He's the best at what he does, and what he does isn't very nice.
But it's
Bashir. Yeah,
it's a hilarious moment though, because everyone's like, oh well, Bashir's so genetically modified, he can do anything, and then he still gets trounced by Quark because Quark knows that he's got a soft spot for Jadzia particularly.
It is, it's in business. You find a weakness.
Yep, and then you just have like this just complete like, wait, all of that talk was just so that you could win? Maybe, I don't know. And then he just takes his money and walks away.
Kind of reminds me of, and again, we mentioned it early in the segment, talking about Family Guy. The character of Quagmire says, "That's Quagmire, that's Quarkmire, giggity giggity prophets." I don't know. Pretty much, yeah. But good stuff. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, if they didn't find something to balance what was happening in the A story, it would have been a very grim deal.
Yeah. So this thankfully makes it a little bit lighter, and it adds a little bit of silliness to counteract the like, oh shit of everything else.
Oh my God. All right, let's move on with episode
Another oh shit episode.
Another oh shit episode. Oh my God, yeah. This is one of those your parents are just people after all, which is a lesson pretty much all of us learn in adulthood. But episode 17 is Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night. Jonathan West is doing the directing. He's a heritage director from back in TNG. Ira Stephen Bear and Hans Beimler are doing the writing, so you got two of the very best of all of Star Trek. From the end of March in 1998, Kira gets a message from Dukat letting her know that Kira's mother, Kira Maru, did not die when Nerys was 3, but was actually Dukat's consort and lover. Kira's like, fuck this. She talks Cisco into hooking her up with the Orb of Time to travel, 20-something years backwards in time to find out the truth. The actor that plays Kira Maru, and again, I'll make another reference to Fox's 24, which I did back in segment 1, played Jack Bauer, our main character, his wife in the first season, who gave us one of the most famous deaths that we've ever had, because she dies off screen and then he finds her dead body, and then that's the end of the season. It was one of the most infuriating moments you will ever watch on television, but not for you now that I told you about it. But were you watching it back there in the day? Yeah. So that was funny. The what I referenced about the actress who plays Amanda in the first episode blowing up a plane and then being
24, yeah.
And then that was the first episode, and then the last episode is when oh God, I can't remember. Terry Bauer was the name of her character, but I can't remember the actress's name. But anyway, so this was kind of a crazy look inside what life was like on Terek Nor during the occupation. It wasn't as grim and gritty as some of the other look backs we've had, because it was the comfort women era. We got an appearance by an actor named David Bowe, who was the collaborator guy. Who Peter, I don't know if you're a fan of Weird Al Yankovic, but his movie UHF, that was his buddy. It's the same guy.
Oh
yeah, his sidekick in that movie was the same dude. But yeah, holy shit, this just really fucked up Kira's world, and Dukat called her to give her this information just to be an asshole. So it's
classic Dukat.
It really serves Mark Alimo's portrayal of this absolutely terrible character, because as we know, Dukat is still on the run. We don't really, because he escaped at the end of Waltz in a shuttlecraft, and now he's kind of living abroad doing who knows what. But he takes the occasion to call Kira up and just basically, let me ruin your day or your life in general by giving you this piece of information that your mother, who you thought was this wonderful martyr who, died this thing and that thing, was a concubine to the worst person you've ever met.
Me.
Yeah, exactly. Me. Yeah, exactly. The other part of it he didn't say, but he knows what she thinks. And he did it for no other reason but to just to fuck with her. So it's just a great.
It also makes like the romantic advances that he makes against her even more creepy than they already are.
Keeping it in the family, huh?
Yeah,
he's
Dukat
is so bad. Else. You're right. So an episode like this makes you look back at what's come previously and just be even more disgusted by how horrible
Dukat
he is.
It's one of those things of Dukat is an onion. He's got layers, and they're all nasty.
Yeah, the layers are more and more. It's like peeling off layers of rotten meat. Oh, there's more rotten meat under this rotten meat. Or like finding additional gallons of milk in your fridge, each one of which is more spoiled.
Yeah, it's chunkier and chunkier as you go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just
he's a chunky gallon of milk, which would be another great pick for the episode title. But I like what we've got. There's
chunky yamak sauce.
Chumpy yamak sauce. So I thought this was a great episode because we all learn invariably we all learn things about our parents, myself included. That going from being a kid, you're like, mom and dad are the world, and wow, how do parents do what they do? They're so magical. And you get older, and I've learned things about my parents while I still love them very much, that I'm like, you know what, my parents, they both loved me a lot, but they screwed up. They screwed up a lot. I would have done this thing differently, but you know what? My dad's a person too. My mom's a person too. People make mistakes. People do the best they can. So, it was funny, Kira Maru, the mother, was in an impossible situation because she could either go with Dukat and be a comfort woman, or go to the station, be a comfort woman, or she could who knows what, just probably stay in the camp and die, and her kids. But by leaving, she secured the health and well-being as much as humanly possible of her husband and her 3 kids. So she had to make this ultimate sacrifice. And Kira, who is her sidekick throughout this episode, is looking at her through most of it like, well, you're a collaborator, you're a this, you're a that, without finally stopping to realize that, and are accusing her of like, I think you like it. And then she is in the next room when her mother is watching a video that gets delivered of her husband saying, well, the children have grown, and I know you're doing this for us, and we love you. And then just listening to Maru weep. And it's at that moment that Kira grabs the Ducat and her, shoves him out in the hallway to escape the homemade bomb that she had planted,
that she had
in the
just
previous
planted
scene.
in the room.
Yeah. So, I thought it was very powerful. It was a very powerful exploration of Ducat's character being gross. Kira having your parents are really just people, so cut them a little bit of slack, because you know what, you can't really know what it was like to be going through what they were going through. So I really admired this episode. I thought it was pretty terrific.
Yeah, I think this is a really solid episode. I think also it really helps. I don't know, it's not a turning point, I want to say, but it's got an interesting moment where Kira has to reevaluate what it means to be a collaborator.
Right.
Because it's not just anyone who was working with the Cardassians because they had no other option.
Right.
But
right. And you're right. It's a real double stand for her, because look at how she regards Odo. He worked for the Cardassians.
Right.
And then it's eventually, it's illustrated to her because he tells her in flashback that he had to, right at the beginning in that episode, Things Past, in the previous season, he had to preside over 3 innocent guys getting killed because, that was the best case scenario, if I remember that episode correctly. So,
yeah, and it's just one of those. It's just an interesting exploration of Kira Nerys as a person, of learning all of that stuff. Of like, and the interesting part is she gets to like interact with her mother in a way that she never was able to previously.
Right.
So she gets to learn a lot more about her as a person. Obviously, we've said that she spends most of the episode hating her, which, has got to do wonders for her psyche.
Right.
But then she eventually figures out, okay, maybe this isn't the same. This isn't what I thought it was.
Right.
She comes to understand. I wouldn't necessarily say forgive, because Kira is not one to let things go quickly.
Yeah, true.
But she's comes more to an understanding, and I think that actually is part of what potentially helps with her relationship with Odo is that further breakdown of this hard line between the resistance and the collaborators,
the black and the white. Yes, exactly.
Right. So it helps her understand that maybe the people who are on the wrong side are there out of necessity, or because they don't have any other way, or what have you. So I think that this is a very poignant episode in that regard. So something that we today could probably listen to a little bit more.
Probably so.
But
I can't in any time. I totally agree with you. So, all right. So in an effort to get heavier, let's watch 2 more heavy episodes. You can episode 18 is yours.
All right. Episode 18. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. It's just Inquisition. Directed by Michael Dorn.
I had forgotten about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, written by Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. Aired on April 4th of 98.
Oh,
Dr. Bashir.
That was April's 22nd birthday, because April 4th is her birthday. Yeah. All right.
Dr. Bashir is wrapping up unfinished tasks prior to departing Deep Space Nine to attend a medical conference. However, prior to his departure, an internal affairs unit under the command of an individual named Sloan arrives and announces they'll be interviewing all of the senior staff. Things take a worrying turn for the good doctor when he realizes that he is the subject of the investigation. It's not something in general. And Sloan accuses him of spying for the Dominion.
Oh, Sloan being portrayed by an absolutely spectacular character actor by the name of William Sadler. Most famously, he was the villain in Die Hard 2. which is the first big
Yep.
role I knew him for.
And
He was in
also
other
Death
movies.
and Bill and Ted's Bogus
Exactly.
Adventure.
Was in the movie The Postman with Kevin Costner. He was in an adaptation of Stephen King's The Mist, which came out in the late 2000s, which I absolutely loved. He's just awesome. I mean, I love most things that I see that guy in, but
He does some pretty
yeah,
good stuff.
this is kind of a big deal, and particularly in reference to what we're going to talk about in our next episode, which is Section 31, which is the ultimate reveal at the end of this episode.
Yes, they're pseudo name dropped at the end of
Yeah.
the episode. It's
Right.
where we get kind of the speed, the talk around, the
Yeah.
circumlocution as to what this organization is or isn't, or what it is, which is something that we've kind of lost. But
Correct.
So yeah, this I think is just a really good episode. In part, it ties back to even though I find it a strange decision, but it ties back to the decision of having Bashir being trapped at a Dominion facility and being replaced by a changeling for a while.
Right.
And
Right.
so
They really find ways to make it plausible that what Sloan is kind of going after could be like, because he was swapped out back at the station during, this was the two-parter arc that started the Dominion coming into the Alpha Quadrant, started the real Cold War with the Cardassians, while he was a replacement back on the station, it's perfectly plausible that he could have been flipped while at the prison camp, hooked up to a mind scramble or
brainwashed. I mean,
something.
we saw that in in TNG with Geordi with the Romulans.
Yep.
So it's like, it's completely plausible the way that they lay this out, which you know, if you're watching the episode for the first time, you're both going like, nah, Bashir couldn't be doing that, but then also,
exactly correct. So great stuff. And again, we do find out that Sloan is actually an agent of the Section 31. We do get a revisitation of what I would call the more pure representation of this later in the season, or later in the series, going into mostly into next season. And then actually in the 10 episode arc that finishes the series, he's factored in very heavily. Then we get it in Star Trek Enterprise with the character of Williams or something. Anyway, I remember talking about it. I said, oh, that's the guy who was the alien in Alien Nation. And it was another one we said, what the hell is that? Because that's my job, is to throw stuff at you've never heard of, because I'm an old man. And then we have Section 31 as it results in Discovery. And we're you know what? We've had enough Discovery bashing in this episode. We're just going to kind of let that go. Fascinating episode. The concept of Section 31, even Odo echoes it, because we have a big roundtable where we have kind of all of our characters in one place at the end of the episode, and they're talking it through, and Odo says, well, it makes sense. Starfleet would have to have kind of an underlayer cabal of secret agents, just like the Romulans do, just like the Cardassians do. And they've been there since Starfleet's been around for 200 years, and this has always been there. So at the end of it, first of all, Sloan makes his recruitment pitch. Bashir says no. But at the end, Sisko says, well, the next time they approach you, you're going to say yes, because
we need to figure out what this is.
We really want to know more about this. So
because we do get a moment from Sisko where it's like he tries to get confirmation from Starfleet Command as to what is this? Is this a real thing? And they're like,
well, but
no, but I can't confirm or deny. Like that, you get the runaround, and that's the interesting thing about Section 31 is they're completely like,
they're legit.
They don't exist,
but they're not legit.
Yeah, they're in the chain of command somehow, but they don't exist in the chain of command.
Right.
Nobody knows who they are, but you do, but you don't. Like, that's the kind of the really weird, funky spot where Section 31 sits, which makes it very different from the Obsidian Order or the Tal Shiar, because those two organizations, everybody knows who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
If someone name drops the Obsidian Order, you see everyone just go, oh shit.
Yeah, right.
You mentioned the Tal Shiar on a Romulan vessel, and it's like, well, we better I'm
sit
with our backs straight and not screw up, otherwise I'm going out that airlock where my family's disappearing.
I'll just go ahead and jump out the airlock myself. They'll kill me and my effing cat at the same time. You know what I mean?
We'll just do the honor among thieves thing, just off yourself.
Yeah, you'd be Audi 5000.
But that's the thing. It's like Section 31, because the Federation is the good guys, having an organization that does this kind of crap, by its nature, it has to be
Yeah.
that level of just
Yeah.
it doesn't really exist
I don't know.
because otherwise the Federation loses its credibility as the good guys.
It's federationist. Yeah, exactly. So the kind of
So,
the
but
underlayers
like
of,
Sloane is he's Section 31 without, like, he is the epitome of what Section 31 is. And so whenever I'm watching anything about Section 31, I'm always comparing characters to Sloane.
right.
And so in Enterprise, Williams or whatever his name is, like, he's still got the same sort of vibe as Sloane, so that works for me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I'll leave that. But yeah, this is a really good tip off. It's also the only time that we see what some people consider the fleet captain rank in the PIP system, where Sloane has a line under his 4 pips,
and he's called a deputy director as a rank, but
Yep.
it doesn't. But it is also imaginary because the near entire idea of
well,
this
it's all in the holodeck, but the fact that it's there implies that it's a real thing because
correct, yeah,
because Bashir doesn't react to it.
He would have gone like, that sounds like bullshit to me, but yeah, you're right. But yeah, the whole fleet captain thing, you know, Peter and I are both part of the International Fan Club, and that's a rank in the International Fan Club. It happens to be my rank, but it's just 5 pips without the little thingy underneath. I like the little thingy underneath. I think that would be
I still think that adding the 4, I think keeping the 4 with the line under makes more sense because you're still a captain. You just have a little bit of extra honorifics rather than anything terribly special.
Exactly.
In the army, in the military, they call it a lateral promotion. You're not going up. So adding a pip doesn't, to me, make sense. But that's
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm a big fan of just the captain to admiral like they had in the movies. You know what I mean? Even though a Commodore was in the background, or you know, a Commodore was thought to be phased out, but then they phased it back in Picard. Anyway, yeah, it was kind of a cool uniform anomaly, which I really dug. All right, we're gonna wrap this up with what is arguably one of the most important Star Trek episodes of all time, I think. And I'd have to go back and look, but back in episode 100 of our show, when we did the bracketology,
this was up there.
This was, I would say, top 10. I would
may have been episode 3 or 2.
Oh, so top 5. That's crazy.
I think it was really far up there.
We are talking about In the Pale Moonlight, directed by Victor Lobel, story by Peter Allen Fields, and teleplay by Michael Taylor from April of 1998. Weary of posting yet another weekly casualty list, Captain Sisko becomes determined to get the Romulans to join the war against the Dominion. He seeks the shady expertise of Garrick to help him achieve this objective. But the bloody reality of the phrase, whatever it takes, quoted by Captain America, soon finds Sisko's ethics being compromised to a breaking point in pursuit of this goal. Wow. And this is really great because it's done in a framing sequence of Sisko sitting alone in his quarters, drinking some scotch, with just wearing with his jacket off, but he's wearing the vest unzipped, and I think
he starts to So first he starts with his uniform like zipped open. You can see the vest under, and then he's slowly divests himself of his Starfleet uniform as the episode goes on until he's just in his red undershirt, which I think is a very interesting storytelling.
Right. And you figured this is probably like 3:00 in the morning and it's at the end of another shitty day and he can't sleep. And he's like, I've got to put this entirety of this log down on wax so I can believe that it's real. Then we go through the entire sequence, which we'll break down a little bit more. But to complete the thought, at the end of it, he just says, computer, erase this entire log. Yeah. So nobody really knows except for the people who are involved.
Which is, at this point, him and Garrick.
Yeah, exactly. Because, so he realizes that, the war is kind of grinding to a halt as far as things go with the Dominion.
It's not going positively.
Yeah, but so he says, we could bring the Romulans in. And it's funny, if you look at the Romulans on the big, I don't have the big map down here in my studio. It's up in our dining room. But if you look at the big map of known space, the Romulan Empire is big, but it's like a third of the size of the Klingon Empire, and it's certainly like maybe 15% the size of the Federation. It's not gargantuan, but they have a big military. They have big scary ships, and so having them, and they also don't border Cardassian space, so I do find the interesting.
They're on the opposite side.
Yeah. I find the line kind of interesting at the end where he says, well, the Romulans joined the war and they attacked 15 bases along their borders. I'm like, I don't think the Dominion would have bases along their borders. And they mentioned something about cutting through Klingon or cutting through Romulan space to get to the Klingons, which I guess if the Dominion was out there running about and they weren't just in Cardassian space, but then again, it was also said that by this point, they had pulled the ships back into Cardassia. So I don't know. That's open to a little bit of interpretation.
The map of how the quadrants' powers are laid out has always been a little fluid in the shows.
Right. Gotta be, yeah. So. And again, even that map that I'm referring to is quasi-canonical because
that
a
map
version
is
of
from,
it,
that map is from the role-playing game, and it's still not 100%. Like we've seen another version of it appear in Strange New Worlds, which generally follows the same borderlines.
But they can mix it about. Yeah, exactly. So it's ever changing. So, but yeah, Sisko says, well, I'm going to have to, by hook or by crook, I guess kind of trick them into figuring that the Dominion is coming after them. And he does. He has Garrick hire this really shady guy to create a recording, which quite frankly, once the Romulan official comes to the station in secret and watches the transmission, we get one of our most famous Star Trek memes is that you see this guy who is played by a very famous character actor whose name is escaping me, hold it up and go, "It's a fake." And then that's a meme that you see, quite frankly, in Star Trek communities all the time.
It's so funny.
But in the end, Garrick pretty much it's Stephen. It's a Stephen Mock, not Stephen Mocked. What's the guy's name? I have to click on the link. Are you in
McCaddy? That's it.
McCaddy. There you go.
Yeah, McCaddy.
But yeah, Garrick sets it up so this guy's ship gets blown up, and then when there's the recording is recovered, anything that was a tip off that it was not genuine would be obscured,
chalked up to the
exactly.
damage.
And so based on that, so Garrick's got it all figured out. And then, this is much like you mentioned. The only violence in this episode is when Sisko figures it out. He loses his temper. Decks Garrick, knocks him down, throws him over a table, knocks him over a second time. And Garrick says, if all it took was to get the Romulans into the war was your sense of self-respect, that's a pretty small price to pay. And Sisko, he can't argue. So then he just walks away. And then he records this log, which at the end of it says, well, I'm glad I said all these things, but this recording doesn't need to exist. Even in my personal log, I don't need to ever listen to it again, and I don't need anybody else to hear it either. So you're right. Yes, an ever virtuous Starfleet captain, which is how we look at all of our captains. Archer, Picard, Kirk, and then Janeway, and then going forward into Michael Burnham, who is a convict. Okay, but then Captain Freeman over on lower decks, Captain Pike, of course. Everybody's got that morally gray bending point, and even Janeway makes reference to it when she meets Captain Ransom in at the end of season 5 and going into season 6 of Voyager.
Equinox,
there's a bending point, but she says, well, I never really broke it. Well, this was breaking ethics. There's no doubt about it.
This was not bending. This wasn't bending it so far to see if it snapped. This was just full on right there.
Yeah, it was. This was a karate chop too.
This was an attempt to Sisko tries to assuage his conscience multiple times throughout this episode of like, okay, we're just lying to them. It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
We're just tricking them, and at the end they'll be in the war and they might get mad, but so he's trying to be like, this isn't really that big of a deal, even though, as Garrick points out in the end of the episode, it's like, once you asked me, you knew what that meant.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You asked for my connections. You know what that means. And even to the point during the episode, like there's a point where he's like, hey, Garrick, could you ask this guy? And he's like, well, I asked my guy. He's dead now. I think they're all dead. And it's like, oh, really?
So I need more. It's like the line in Die Hard, we're going to need more FBI guys, I guess, because they get blown up. But he is, and likened to something I said about Quark, being like Wolverine, he's the best at what he does, but what he does isn't very nice. So
it's most certainly not nice.
Garrick is gonna get shit done, but it's gonna be bad. And so be careful, what you wish for and know what you're asking for.
Be
And
careful what you wish for. You will get it, but it will
yeah,
not. It's kind of like the classic idea of a genie, right? You
yeah,
wish for
right.
something and it's like, oh, you got it. It's just not necessarily what you meant.
It's more like the monkey's paw, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or the other old adage, when people show you who they are, believe them. So we know who Garrick is.
Yeah, we've
Cisco's not
always
stupid.
known who
Yeah.
Garrick is.
So that if you employ him to do something, it'll get done by cutting corners that might go right down the middle.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, even
yeah,
and Garrick like makes sure that there's no loose ends. Like Senator Vreenak and his whole staff, like anybody
dead.
who knew that he was in Deep Space Nine is
Yeah.
dead.
The guy who made the recording dead.
The forger, he's dead. He's
Yep.
been dead for a while.
And then Cisco does the same thing when he erases the recordings because that's evidence.
Yep. It's like Cisco's completely
yeah.
complicit in it, and he knows it.
Yeah.
And I mean, Garrick is completely unapologetic, which
he's got nothing
he has
to
no
apologize
reason
for.
to be.
Yeah.
He is an Obsidian Order agent. This is what he does.
Yep.
So it makes complete sense.
If you let the dog off its chain, it's gonna tear somebody's throat out.
And there's this interesting thing earlier in the episode where like there's a conflict between Quark and the Forger, and Cisco has to like just make it go away because no one can know that this guy is here.
Right.
Yeah. And
exactly.
he's bargaining with Quark, and then Quark makes this comment. He quotes the rules of acquisition, which really you can see bothers Cisco, which
Big
is just
time.
fantastic acting from Avery
Yeah.
Brooks. But Quark just gets up and just looks at him like, you're proving me. Thank you for restoring my faith in the, I think, 139th rule of acquisition. Every man has his price.
Yeah.
And it's just, you see Cisco just go, oh, shit.
Just kind of grit his teeth like, you got me.
And he's just like, I hate that I'm doing this. I hate that I had to do this, but you're right. Damn it.
And I'm not stopping. Yeah.
And I can't stop. And so there's some fantastic, amazing acting from particularly Avery Brooks in this episode, because he carries the whole damn episode.
Yeah.
Both with the framing stuff and then just how he has to do the entire episode.
Yeah.
And then obviously we have some really good acting from
Andy
Andrew
Robinson too. Yeah.
As Garrick as well. So there's just
this
is one of the most well put together episodes that really explores the like, as you said in there, whatever it takes.
Right.
Like, we are in shit and we've got to find a way out, and this is the only way out, and this is the best option I've got, and it's terrible.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's an interesting episode, which I'm not going to say that we don't think about it that much, because I'm sure that people do, but it's an interesting thought about like our heroes and people we look up to. Sometimes they have to make morally reprehensible decisions because there's no other option.
Just like with Kira's mother. So
just like with Kira's mother, it's just kind of a theme here.
This or death. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
even tying back even to the previous episode with Inquisition with Section 31, like they do the reprehensible things that no one else was willing to do.
Right.
And so there's a lot of that going on in here. And I think this is part of what inspired Ron D. Moore with some of the characterization that he does in Battlestar.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Where there's a lot of people making absolutely impossible decisions and having to make something that most of us would be like, well, I would never do it that way. I couldn't do it that way. That's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah,
but it's one of those like, but were you there? Did you have to make that call? Did you have those options? Like to make a real world of relation, think back to the end of the Second World War.
Right.
Right. A lot of us are quick to say like, that was terrible.
Right.
But you got to think about what were their options? What were they thinking? Was there another way? I'm not going to say one way or the other. That's not what this podcast is about.
Right.
But like, that's clearly like the kind of thing that the writers were thinking about when they wrote this episode. Because you're putting good people in terrible situations that they have to make a decision for. And then you rely on someone who, they're known to make terrible decisions, but it's your only option.
You let him off the chain, he's going to do what he does. Exactly.
And it's like, and for most of us, this doesn't like tarnish Cisco as a character, because it's like he did what he had to do.
Yeah.
And he still is a good man. He just made an impossible decision. So this is one of those episodes where like, it's horrible. It really is in like what has to happen, but it shows the conflict. It shows the character growth. It shows the ethical conundrum that's going on in a masterful way that is a reason why it got so high
Yeah.
in our episode
Right.
listing back in episode 100.
Exactly. Cool. Oh man. Well, that makes it pretty easy to wrap this up because I feel like we're both going to have a very clear answer for top of the pack, which is going to be this episode. Nothing else needs to be
no
said.
Question. This is just the best episode.
Exactly. And then as far as a low point, also tough, but I'm probably going to have to go with One Little Ship. It's just not in comparison, because it's hard not to compare them to the other episodes. It just doesn't have a lot of relevance or contribution to the overall theme. It's just kind of a one-off. So that's
for the very simple reason is that it just doesn't have the same punch as the rest of the episodes. Not because it's a bad episode. It's a good episode. Right. It's a fun episode, but
it's just
if we have to relevant. Pick the least out of the bunch, that's just what we have to go with, just because the rest of these are just really heavy hitters.
So much so. All right, well, cool. Well, that wraps us up. Great stuff. Always keep in mind, and I was just having this chat with Kurt, our Patreon, our secretfriendsunite@gmail.com mailbag is always open. Let us know what you're enjoying in Star Trek. Let us know what you thought about this episode. If you have different thoughts about Discovery, I'd love to have somebody come back in defense of Discovery, tell us why we're totally off kilter. I invite that. So again, secretfriendsunite@gmail.com. Also, being a part of our Discord is a really great place. I put feelers out there every time we do an episode. This is what we're covering. We'd love to hear from you. If you're not part of our Discord, please send me a message. I'll give you my contact info in a second here. But, we do have a Facebook community. It's not really active, but the Discord is really very active. So that's definitely where you want to be. If you're not familiar with Discord, we can help you with that too. Discord, especially in the tumult that's going on right now with TikTok, Discord is just a place to have chats and do video and stuff. There's not advertisements. There's not random posts from people about politics and religion, because we don't allow that in Secret Friends Unite. It's not allowed. We just talk about geek stuff. And so we'd love to have you on board. But yeah, that's where you can find me. But I'll let Peter tell you where you can find him first, and then I'll wrap it up. So go ahead.
You can find me on most social medias at Petrus Aquinas. I'm not terribly active, but I'm there. I'm more active on the Discords than anything else. And I use that plural intentionally because it's multiple servers. That's where you can find me. You can also find me on ELH's Twitch and YouTube channels. We're starting up a new Star Trek Adventures campaign next week or something.
Oh, cool.
I think I'm playing a Temerian this time. So,
oh my gosh, I should weigh in at some point. I might have to have you get into me that someday.
Yeah.
Someday.
And you can also find me behind the scenes at Starship Excelsior, where we're trying to get all of our episodes uploaded to YouTube without too much fanfare, because there's not a whole lot of animation that I am capable of doing, but they'll be up there so you can at least find them a little bit more easily.
Good deal. All right. Well, as always, you can find me across the socials. That would be Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads as @the CEETHREE. And again, I will plug the heck out of Discord, our Secret Friends Unite Discord, and also our United Trekkers of Michigan. That is just a fun, safe place to talk about Star Trek. You don't have to be from Michigan, but I had to call it something because so many of us live here in Michigan. But anyway, that is the show. Thanks for joining us. We will be back in our next episode with a special guest to talk about the Section 31 TV movie, which will be airing the same week that you're listening to this episode, on Friday, the 24th of January here in 2025. But with that, I will bid you adieu. I will tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.